Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's been a little while since I did my episode 1 of Beta 52, and in fact, since I published that first video, there have been revisions all the way up in the experimental branch all the way up to Beta 52B. It's gone through A, and now we're on B. And even B is it's going to be hot fixed soon, or patched soon, because of certain sort of game-breaking bugs that were introduced. So I'm going to get into those. So for those reasons, this episode is actually not the start of a playthrough. I'm just going to talk about the new stuff that came in Alpha and Beta, in A and B, and also the bugs that some were fixed and some new ones were introduced. So that's exciting. So let's start a new world, start a new game. I'm just going to pick my first colony. I'm going to pick somewhere with trees, lots and lots of trees, and I'll explain why. Yeah, briefly. Boreal forest always has a crap ton of trees. Alright, so what's up with beta? First of all, why did I wait to start the playthrough, even which I'm not actually starting now? Well, toward the end of 51, so even in the experimental releases in 51, there was a stockpile and resources bug where the stockpile would not accurately reflect the number of resources you had in the pile. Now, 52 was supposed to fix some of that, and it fixed some instances of that, but not all of them. So when 52 came out, I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll wait for the experimental branches to come out, and hopefully they will fix the stockpile bug. And now we're up to 52B, and I believe the stockpile bug has been solved. So that's good. However, there were issues with some of the new features that have been added. So the new features are worth talking about, but also the bugs that some of those new features added kind of break the game. Anyway, you can read the message to the developers here. In brief, and I'll explain it maybe as we go through this episode, changes to the way immigration works, changes to building upkeep, and there's a whole bunch of new menus so you can look at the status of your buildings without having to actually find them on the map. And apparently there's a new horror of some kind wandering around somewhere on the map. I'm not sure we'll see it. Also, cults. Cults have been reintroduced to the game. So that's fun. Right. Let's get this started. So pretty standard starting loadout here. I just picked the basic starting loadout, and I'm just going to assign my one unassigned worker here. All right, let's get the carpentry set up, and then I will start talking about. So first of all, a bunch of UI changes. You can see here, as I probably explained this in the previous video. Once I've drawn out the blueprint, the game will actually tell me the projected material cost, which is nice. Again, modules you cannot yet build because they're not in possession, or you haven't built them and they aren't in your stockpile. They are grayed out on the menu. So I'm going to build a carpentry here with 2 carpentry workstations for now. All right. Some of you may be wondering, what are those treasure chests up along the top of the interface? I will explain those. First, let's get some rocks. Almost spoiled for choice here. I guess I'll harvest this rock. So, the item repair system has been overhauled. In revisions prior to this, specific modules would accumulate wear and tear over their lifetime as they were used, and occasionally they would break or they would show damage, and then if they were not repaired and your colonists continued to use them, they would just break entirely and become unusable until they were repaired. And each broken module had a specific repair cost. Usually it reflected their construction costs. So these carpentry workbenches, for instance, need 2 logs to build. So when they need repair, they also need input of logs. Now the basic stone ovens require, I believe, 1 plank and 3 stone, or 2 stone, I think it was, to construct. And so when they break, they will require either planks or stone, one or the other. That's the way it used to work when modules were broken due to overuse. This has kind of been, so that maintenance mechanic has kind of been replaced by this new resource. It's kind of a resource. These are repair trunks. So these are trunks of varying quality from common up to, these have proper names. I'll be able to look them up in a second. But basically these are of increasing quality and they correspond to increasing quality modules. So basically every 5 days, because apparently the Clockworkian week is 5 days long, you'll have to pay a resource trunk cost. And the resource trunks represent all the resources you are putting into keeping things maintained. And the resource trunks are things you can make at the carpentry and maybe other workshops. Basically, you make them ahead of time and they're in your stockpile. And at the end of the week, the workshop will oblige you to spend trunks to keep the workshop maintained. And if you have enough of them, all well and good, nothing breaks. But if you have insufficient repair trunks, then that specific workshop breaks, and it ceases to function. All modules within a broken workshop cease to function, and that means, of course, you're in serious trouble if your carpentry breaks, because that's your first place. That's your first source of resource trunks. So that's one thing. Now you'll notice some of the buttons here have been resized, and there are a bunch of new buttons. Let's take a look at these. So, well, here's the good old work crew menu, same as usual. These are sort of quick shortcuts for categories of buildings. So, of course, our buildings fall into 3 categories: offices, workshops, and housing. Now, the only building I have is actually this workshop. So if we click on this, we'll see that each workshop I build will be listed here, and it gives me basically this is a summary panel, right? So each functional workshop I have has its own name. You can assign overseers here. Comments will appear in this little box here, and it will also tell you the condition, like if it's crowded or not, in this other line, and it'll indicate its repair status. This is true of all 3 categories of buildings. Yeah, there'll be more to see as the game develops. Start with the cabbage fields. I'm going to put you here instead. I'm going to flatten you. I'm not sure this rocky outcropping can be flattened. Maybe. Probably assign someone to actually work the field. Does anyone here have an affinity for farming? No, although we have duplicate ceramics. So myrtle iron thatch. Get to be the farmer here. Okay. Who among you is good at carpentry? Muriel Motley. Okay. I'm actually going to go back into the workroom menu, take out this assign laborer, and assign her to Muriel. Not Myrtle. Here we go, Muriel. Alright, so we'll take a look here. First of all, as always, I'm going to set up a standing order to turn logs into planks. Alright, so we can see here that I'll direct your attention up to the top line, where having completed a workshop and filled it with some modules, I now have a cost here, an upkeep cost of 3, I believe it's basic repair trunks. Well, we'll take a look here. Oh, novice repair, okay. So they come in 4 varieties, right? Novice, artisan, where are the other ones? They do not appear here in the... It may be that the higher level repair trunks need other workshops to build. Anyway, I'm going to start building a repair trunk. So repair trunks are not too expensive. I'm going to set this up as a recurring or standing order because this is a weekly cost. right at the end of day 5, and of course we're at the night of day 1. The game is going to check whether at my current state of development I can pay the requisite number of repair trunks to keep everything in good repair. So the game here is telling me I need 3 by the end of the week, of which I currently have 0. So each of these novice repair trunks requires 1 raw log, not too onerous. And how is that cost calculated? Well, just for having a building, it won't cost you any trunks, any weekly. There will be no weekly cost for trunks. The thing that makes trunk cost go up is the modules you put in a building. So the more modules you have in a building, the more the repair trunk cost goes up. And as you put higher and higher quality modules in, so the carpentry can, for instance, have a power saw, and that will incur an artisan repair trunk cost, again on a weekly basis. So you can see each week I'm going to have to pay some assortment of various trunk costs, and it's in my best interest to keep a whole bunch of them handy. It's another standing cost unless I want to be very micromanagey and switch out costs in and out. Which means, among other things, it would be helpful to have more carpentry workbenches because the carpentry can then have more standing orders, right? Let's put another. So, how are we doing for stone? Okay, I think we're okay there. All right, so that's the repair trunk system. It's a topic of active debate on the forums because again, it's another overhead cost, and of course, when you have increased costs like that, some people are going to say, well, it's just going to make it harder to develop, right? More of my resources are just going to have to go into maintenance, just maintaining the things I have. Just having things is more expensive now. And I think the idea behind its inclusion by the developers is that you'll really want to establish a really solid supply chain. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't think anyone has had... I mean, this experimental branch release came out only yesterday. So not a lot of people have had enough time to sort of suss out what it means for the long game. Just to add to that, the resource cost system is actually broken, or it's bugged right now. It's actually gone up to 6 per week for some reason. So I'm gotta fix that. Again, now I need 6 a week, so I may as well make this a standing order for 6. Oops. Why is it jumping from... Oh, it's probably to do with the autosave. We'll wait for the autosave to fire off. Okay. Right. That was weird. I guess I want planks. Or not planks. I guess I want some cots. So, here's the thing. That's why the cost went up. I added the third carpentry workbench was added. And because there are more modules in here, the cost increased. So, that makes sense. Where the game-breaking bug comes in is that rather than just adding to the upkeep cost, it actually multiplied the upkeep, or not even multiplied. It, in the developer's words, the upkeep costs for multiple identical modules actually made the resource cost increase exponentially. So you'll see, when I build, and I suppose the next thing I want to build is probably a kitchen, but when I get around to building some housing, and I stuff it with lots and lots of beds, the resource cost shoots up very quickly. Like a moderate-sized house with 4 or 5 beds can easily shoot your monthly repair trunk cost up to like 50 a week. That's a bug. That is not working as intended, and it should not be increasing at that rate. For that reason, however, this particular experimental branch is kind of not playable for long periods. Now the developers are considering hotfixing it, or if not, I'm sure it will be fixed in time for the next experimental release. And for those of you not familiar with the way Gaslamp Games is releasing revisions to this game in early access. Whole numbers 51, 52, 53 are stable branch releases. And those come out about once a month. And then between stable branch releases, there are experimental releases. So between 51 and 52, there was 51A, 51B, C, D, E. Got all the way up to J last time, before 52B came out. And yeah, those come out however frequently they need to between stable branch releases. So you can see my carpenter, Muriel, making trunks. So I've got 6 in store. So now we filled the standing order, so she's no longer going to make trunks. She's going to concentrate on turning wood into planks and planks into cots. All right, we should probably put some modules in the kitchen here. And actually need some planks. Obviously, my single carpenter has been busy making repair trunks. And the next thing I'm going to build will be a lower class house, so everyone has somewhere to sleep. Speaking of somewhere to sleep, that's where the changes to the immigration system come in. But let me finish blueprinting out this house first. Right. So how did immigration work? In revisions prior to this one, so even all the way up to 52, immigration was based on the production of your colony. When you made things like food, so when you cook raw food into cooked food, when you turned logs into planks, when you made finished goods like cabinetry and windows and chairs, all of those had a production value, and your production value, or the total value of the things you produced, was measured against an internal milestone. So as you meet certain internal production milestones, you would get waves of immigration, which is typically 1 to 3 unskilled laborers or maybe 1 overseer. And that was calibrated to basically to a rate the devs felt was reasonable for the game. That's been changed, so that immigration system has been replaced entirely. As you can see, I have 7 of 7 colonists. Now, your ability to accept colonists will depend on living space. Or not living, well, yes, living space, but not beds. And we can actually see... Okay, so apparently farms count as offices under this interface. Once the house is built, the lower class housing here, we'll be able to click on this building and you'll be able to see. But basically, when you build a lower class house of whatever size, it will increase your lower class colonist cap. Mine is currently 7. It will increase it by 3, I believe, or some small number, 2 or 3. You can get more overseers by building middle class housing. And each middle class house you build will increase your middle class overseer cap by 1 each. So regardless of the number of beds you stuff in them, the number of houses you have now raises your immigration cap. So you'll build a building, you'll raise the cap, and then shortly thereafter, or next time an immigration wave can happen, you will get more immigrants of the type you're able to house. So you don't get, basically you have direct control over the types of immigrants you get now. A fairly common complaint was that people would get just a constant trickle of overseers, which they didn't really want, and not enough workers. So you'd have a whole bunch of work crews. For every middle class overseer you receive, you'll get a new line in this work crew list, basically, and each one of those is a squad, or a work crew. All of your unskilled laborers would go into these like crew slots, and people were finding they constantly get more overseers than they needed and not as many colonists as they wanted. So with the current changes now, you can determine for yourself which type of colonist you get. And here's my colonist asking me to build a barracks, which is a good idea. But I'm going to have to wait on that because I have 2 buildings waiting for construction. How am I doing for... Oh, I'm very short on logs. There we go. So, of course, the added complication is that having to build buildings to attract more colonists means that you have yet another building that is incurring this weekly repair trunk cost, which means you need to build more repair trunks, which means you have to devote more workers to the carpentry and more colonists to chop down trees, to turn them into logs, and then after that to turn them into trunks. Once everything is debugged and properly finished, it'll be interesting to see how increased capacity for colonists balances against increased maintenance costs of having places to put your new colonists. Right now, it kind of isn't working because you can't build buildings, you can't attract colonists to increase your labor force faster than that increases your need for repair trunks. But that's bugged, right? It's getting fixed. Let's get rid of these ugly stumps in the stockpile. Okay, so bunkhouse under construction, kitchen under construction. Now we're going to see the novice repair trunk costs shoot up as soon as these modules get built, but even faster when I start stuffing this house full of cots. So one early strategy that seems to have emerged is to build teeny tiny little houses and stuff them with only a small amount of cots. And that way you minimize the number of active modules you have and thereby keep the maintenance costs of maintaining said modules down. I'm probably going to need more cots, so I'm going to just order up another 4 on top of the 2 I have in my stockpile. Right, how much stone do I have? Okay, got enough stone, and still need more planks. Why is nobody sawing planks? Is it tea time? It is indeed early tea time, or it's the pre-tea time slot. And although most of the crews are happy enough to continue working here, my carpenter is not. Muriel Motley is not so happy that she's enthusiastic enough to work through early tea time. So she's going to be off for these 2 shifts. Thanks, Muriel. Holding up the whole colony here. In the meantime, while we wait for everyone to come off tea time, as I discussed in the previous video, of course, tea time causes jobs to be interrupted, especially if you're on a long distance, like hauling. Say I sent someone out here to pick berries, right? I believe these are berries. Yep. And it takes longer than 2 or 3 shifts of the day. Then if they got there and part of the way back, or they got part of the way there, and then tea time hit, they would drop what they're doing. And this is a problem if they're hauling things, or if they had gathered things from the stockpile and were on their way to assemble a module. Because they would just drop what they're carrying wherever, and then someone else will have to go wander out and grab it. So that's seen a small revision in that jobs that are interrupted now have their resources returned to the stockpile, and those resources are once again eligible to be used in the construction of modules and workshops. So we're going to wait here for a little for some of the additional modules to be built. Actually, I can start placing those cots. Now, I did mention cults earlier, and it turns out cults have been re-added as... Well, cults have been re-added, but also a cult arc, an event arc, has been added in the game. So now there's a Strange Meteor event and a Fishy Idol event, and I believe there's an... what's that thing called? The Canopic Geometer, like a Strange Artifact event. And now there's a Cult Crisis event arc. Right. Let's get our many cots installed. How many do we have? 4. So I've got 4 in stock right now. Pay close attention. Okay, so. Right? We just finished building 1 stone oven, and trunk consumption has gone up to 8 a week. Now I am... do I have any food? Actually... Well, we're growing cabbage, but it is nowhere near harvest. So we do have the food that we brought with us, which is a small amount, which will last us maybe one more day. Better start looking out for forageables, actually. Any berries are in here? Well, anyway. Oh, I have a bunch of raw bird, though. So let's... Oh, here's a new thing. But first of all, let me order up some cooked meat. Actually, let's just make that a standing order. So, when I click... also, I need, obviously, to assign someone to be the cooks. No one here has a special affinity for cooking. So, Philomena Brazenlock, the job is yours. Just you happen to be closest to the top. All right. Let's take a look at what workshops are able to produce. And then we'll take a look at the shortcut menu, basically, for housing. So, if we open up the carpentry workshop, we can see that the variety of things that the carpentry workshops are able to produce are, they pop up in a list as usual, but now they're grayed out. And what this usually means is that they might actually all be grayed out because I currently have no workers because it's early evening. But the things you have the resources to make will be in bold black text. And in theory, the things you're not able to make are grayed out. This is kind of broken in that it's not operating properly. For instance, let's take a look at... Okay, everything's grayed out here as well. Well, for instance, I know that I have a bunch of raw bird. In fact, some of it's already been cooked. Let's see. So I've still definitely got some raw bird, which the kitchen can definitely still cook into cooked meat. So in theory, the cooked meat line here should be in black. Right now, everything is grayed out. So the gray out things you can't build, functionality is not solid yet. Sometimes it works and sometimes it's not working. So if you just happen to know, or if you do like I do and look at the stockpile and see what you have, and then just go here, you can actually still queue it up even though it's grayed out. So it's a UI issue, minor. It doesn't accurately reflect what you're able to build. I'm sure that should be simple to fix, right? Well, we've got one cot placed, and again, upkeep requirements have gone up, so I'm now going to need 9 a week, of which I have 6. Yeah, so ignoring for now the magnitude of your repair trunk cost, we can see that there's an overhead just to having and maintaining things. And once it's calibrated properly, what this means is that, first of all, your early colony is going to consume wood like a mofo. Like, you are going to be consuming logs to make planks, to make cots, to make buildings. You're also going to be consuming just raw logs to make trunks. And, of course, you're going to have a weekly upkeep cost in... It will cost you trunks... so it'll cost you logs in the form of trunks to replace all the things you're rapidly building. So you're easily going to double your wood consumption in the early game, which is going to make life extremely difficult in wood-poor biomes like the desert or the steppe. Right? Development there is going to be have to be extremely safe, and you're going to have to spend a lot of your resources. Maybe you build a trading post very early in the game so you can trade for the wood. Or maybe your things are just going to fall into early disrepair because you won't be able to keep everything in good repair. Right? So second cot built. Again, upkeep requirements gone up. Let's see. Right. So unlike the previous construction of cots, this one actually made the upkeep requirements go up by 3. So again, I'm going to need 14 cots a week. Aristocratic sympathy. So that's where we are. That's what... that's what 52B has introduced to the game. Again, this is not going to be my actual playthrough. And the reason for that is, of course, this increases exponential at approximately the same development in my personal game. But when I had built a big old bunkhouse with a ton of beds, I had a weekly upkeep of something like 57 trunks a week, which is crippling my ability to do anything else, and I wasn't able to keep up with the trunk requirements. That said, all this is a new feature, and obviously prone to berries. Obviously needs some refinement, but that's why it's an experimental branch release, right? So the developers want feedback on how the game feels and whether or not, how the pace of the game is and what needs tweaking. So if you're playing this one, I think they're really eager to hear what you think of this system. Okay, so immigrants arrive. Having built lower class housing, I am now eligible. Oh, because I built lower class housing, I am eligible for 2 additional workers, and they have arrived. Let's assign them, I don't know, here and here, right? So if we click on the housing management view, we can see that each lower class house increases the population cap for lower class colonists by 2. Okay, so it is always 2, regardless of the size of the house. So the current issue is that resource costs increase exponentially, whereas workers increase only arithmetically, which means eventually at some point early in the game you can't afford to attract any more workers, but the workers you do have won't be able to keep up with your maintenance costs. Again, that's going to be fixed. Otherwise, I think also beta is having some minor stability issues. Some users are reporting that the game is a little bit unstable after loading saved games. I haven't experienced that myself, but I am hopefully that'll get sorted out soon. So what I'm reading on the boards is that the the repair trunk issue should be fixed soonish. At which point I will, I'm going to try and start a bit of a playthrough, just a few sessions long playthrough of where the game's at now. But those are pretty significant revisions in the experimental branch from 52 up to where we are now at 52B. Again, to summarize, there's new immigration. There's these new control windows, which is kind of convenient in that once I have a whole bunch of buildings, I don't actually have to physically click on them, right? Because it's always a little bit buggy. I have to click on the floor or something to pull up to interact with them. There we go, right? Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find the exact spot to click. So these interface windows are pretty cool. Again, changes to the workshop system. Interrupted jobs now return their ingredients. And the repair trunk system, obviously, that's a new thing. And cults are back. So, interesting time to be in the early access track. Although, subject to early access and experimental branch, not everything's working properly. Oh, bandits. Marjorie's Nasty Crims. There are two bandits. All right, shoot them on sight. So, the game is Clockwork Empires, being developed by Gaslamp Games. My name is Alfred. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you found this one informative. Hopefully, I'll be able to start the actual playthrough soonish, whenever some of these bugs that make the game not playable get fixed. Thanks very much for watching. I will catch you next episode.